All right, good morning, everybody. And once again, welcome to the ISDR 2025 Humanity Keynote Forum. This year, ISDR 2025 presents 3 keynote forums, each exploring the role of design from different perspectives, which include humanity, public industry, and technology. And the first keynote on humanity is entitled Left by Our Own Devices. This keynote session invites us to reflect on how we might return to more fundamental human considerations as we face complex challenges brought by AI and emerging technologies. So with that, we are very honored to have 2 speakers that will be presenting to us first, and following that, we'll have a discussion and inviting panelists to join us on this stage. So with that, we have Professor Johan Rydström from Academy of Art and Design from the University of Gothenburg, Sweden, as well as Professor Laura Forlano from College of Arts, Media and Design of Northeastern University of USA. So with that, we will hand the floor to our 2 speakers. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So I'm Johan Rydström, and I'm from Sweden, University of Gothenburg.
And I'm Laura Forlano from Northeastern University in Boston. I wanted to thank everyone, especially the organizers and the staff, for having us here today. We're really thrilled to be with you.
So we were invited here to address one of the perhaps most difficult challenges we face in design at the moment, that of when machines, in particular AI technologies, are beginning to take over roles and responsibilities that used to be just ours. And we don't seem to have that.
好，请工作人员帮我们开启讲师的简报。
Machines.
Okay. All right. Look, we have that. Over to you.
And here we go. So news headlines like the ones passing behind, have been on things we see almost daily. And indeed, even to call something out as a humanity forum points to a certain gravity. So as a response to the invitation we got, we felt that a traditional keynote format wouldn't quite work. This is not one of those issues when one perspective, one take on the matters would be sufficient. So we felt we wanted to try something different, which is what we're going to do today. So instead of getting 1, you're getting 2, followed by a panel. And the idea here is that we get more perspectives active and try new formats as we face new challenges.
Okay, so the design brief that we're using was written on the basis of the questions and ideas that the organizers of the forum put forward to us. And it goes like this. The question today is not whether we can humanize AI or compute humanity, but rather how we can develop and experience design approaches that actively demonstrate what it means to live well with machines as well as with each other. How can design respond to the polycrisis that AI can be seen to be? What perspectives, ideas, and concepts will help us ask the most critical questions? And what questions will help us develop new pathways forward? The use of machines has been central to design since industrialization, ranging from how industrial manufacturing called for a different understanding of form to how user-centered design for usability came forth as a response to increasing use of machines in everyday life. Machines have not only been at the center of production, but also of design practice and theory. And now, as various forms of artificial intelligence become more widely used, we seem, yet again, to encounter a new kind of machines that bring disruptive change to design. To explore and emphasize the importance of multiple perspectives and voices when addressing these challenges, this keynote is based on a collaborative format, with the 2 talks addressing the same brief but in 2 separate ways, followed by a panel and shared discussion.
So I will start. I think this is it. You hear me good? So when trying to address such overwhelming challenges like the ones we have up against, where does one begin? And even before we begin, from where do we start? So in my response to this brief, I'd like to address this question, from where do we start? Because what comes next is highly conditioned from where we come from, what disciplinary perspectives form our basis. And obviously, we come from many different places. There's not just one way of doing design, there are very many. And what I will tell is a story based on my own perspective, my own context and culture of Sweden where I work. But my hope is that by showing you my story, I will inspire you to think more about yours as well. So this will come in 3 parts. I will start by addressing why it is that the headlines like we saw before seem so strangely familiar. Have we been here before? Is this something we've encountered in design before? And from that, I will turn to examining where we come from, especially ideas from early industrial design around aesthetics and functionalism. What was that really about? And as a third concluding part, I will ask myself, okay, so what do we do now? What does that mean for how we think about where we go next? There's something going on with the slides automatically changing behind. I hope that's not gonna keep doing that. We'll see. Anyway, I like to start with this quote. And it's still there. Today's world is a world of machines. We live among machines. They help us with everything we do in our work and recreation. But what do we know about their moods, their natures, their animal defects, if not through arid and pedantic technical knowledge? Machines reproduce themselves faster than mankind, almost as fast as the most prolific of insects. They already force us to busy ourselves with them, to spend a great deal of time taking care of them. They've spoiled us. We have to keep them clean, provide them with nourishment and rest, continually tend to them, and meet their every need. In a few years' time, we will become their little slaves. Do you know what this is? No? Huh? This is the Manifesto of Machinism from 1938 by Bruno Munari, one of the very first industrial designers in Italy. And we can ask, is this unique for the time, or were there others thinking like this? It seems there were. So in 1934, the Museum of Modern Art in New York staged an exhibition called Machine Art, in which they displayed industrial objects, instruments, machine parts, and everyday objects in combination in a way that hasn't been before. And the idea was to address the question of what makes things beautiful in an age of machine production. And here's a quote from the foreword to the exhibition catalog. Today, man is lost in the far more treacherous wilderness of industrial and commercial civilization. On every hand, machines literally multiply our difficulties and point to our doom. If, to use L.P. Jack's phrase, we are to end the divorce between our industry and our culture, we must assimilate the machine aesthetically as well as economically. Not only must we bind Frankenstein, we must make him beautiful. So there's a theme emerging here, that since machines is a threat to humanity, art and design needs to do something about it, and it can.
So I think I just checked with them inside, and it seems that it's because of the animation and the slides that caused it a little bit delayed. So if you like, you can also say next, please. They will control it from inside.
I think it's working now.
It worked now? Okay.
I think at least we are on the same page, though. Yeah. So here's another example. It's another exhibition from the 30s. And it starts with a question that's very much in line with the questions we ask today. If we accept the state of things as they are today, will we not run the risk of becoming slaves to the machines? And the response is, we face the same risk even if we do not accept it. Specialization has already left us dependent on numerous technological processes that only a few technicians understand in detail, and nobody has control over their outcomes. We depend on these processes for our supplies of nourishment, water, and other necessities, our communication systems, etc. Technology and speed must not become ends in themselves. One important task is to oppose the unreflecting worship of the attributes of modern production that is becoming widespread. The aids we make use of are so complicated and powerful that we must apply them wisely. This is from Acceptera, a manifesto published in connection to the Stockholm exhibition in 1930. And since this is from Sweden and where I come from, I'd like to dig a little bit deeper here. So unlike the MoMA exhibition, for instance, the Stockholm exhibition was not about art or machines. It was about proposing a way forward for Sweden becoming a welfare state. And in particular, it aimed to present solutions to the housing crisis that was caused by Sweden's industrialization and urbanization. In the late 1800s, Sweden was actually still one of Europe's poorest countries, and about 20% of our population migrated primarily to the North Americas because of famine and to seek better lives. Sweden was relatively late to be industrialized, and in the early 20th century, it was changing rapidly. It was intense times also politically, with women's voting rights legislated in 1921. And against this backdrop of urgent needs, the Stockholm exhibition presented new solutions and to everyday life made possible with new production techniques. So as the manifesto's name suggests, a recurrent theme throughout here is that there's no going back to previous times. What we need to do is to accept the situation we're in and decide how to move on. As in the following quote, which is quite informative. Industrialism is the major factor in new culture if we want one. We must accept it to be able to use it for our own good. To see our situation clearly and arrive at new fruitful conception, we must cleanse ourselves of all the old, purely aesthetic perspectives that in reality we have outgrown. But it's no easy thing to leave conventions behind, as you all know. So how do they propose to do this? Here's an example, and especially the first part here is kind of interesting when thinking about technologies like generative AI. Artistic eclecticism finally seems to have bankrupted itself after unsuccessful attempts to realize clearly placed it together or more or less modernized versions of all the forms of preceding cultures, or to invent new styles analogous to these, styles consisting of a series of approved forms. But we cannot embrace a certain form for any length of time and for its own sake. Our general approach is relativistic. No style can any longer be anything absolute to us. On the other hand, there can be no doubt that our age, in its desire for objectivity, to allow things to be what they are, to shape everything logically according to its function, has its specific characteristics. By style, we must then mean the ways and forms in which the needs of the age and the way in which people live find adequate expression. There are several things worth noting here, I think. First, we have the familiar theme of mass-produced industrial objects exhausting and in many ways ruining previous forms of craft and skilled labor. So, for instance, the criticism of rich ornamentation, which used to be an expression of great effort, skill, and therefore also value, being reproduced at very low cost and therefore not almost the opposite of value in the end. But on the other hand, we see something that's quite the opposite of the narrative we often find in design history. Their argument is not about dogmas. On the contrary, they argue that there's a need to embrace a relativistic approach and to embrace how people actually live. So this is not a call, actually, for a new style or look, which we might think when we see the pictures. It's about searching for a fundamentally different understanding of design aesthetics. And I find this really intriguing. But to follow this, I need to move into a slightly more speculative terrain, looking into where this proposition might lead. And I'm going to start with Louis Mumford, who in the same year as the MoMA exhibition, Machine Art, published his book, Techniques and Civilization, in which he makes the following distinction between machines and tools, two of the most important kinds of technical objects we have. And he states that the essential distinction between a machine and a tool lies in the degree of independence in the operation from the skill and motive power of the operator. The tool lends itself to manipulation, the machine to automatic action. And if we for a moment just forget about the enormous amounts of issues that hide underneath the surface here, and ask, what does this distinction actually mean for how we come into designing these things? We get something like this. Since our notion of machines oriented towards automatic action, the first question we will tend to ask has to do with what those actions are, what the machine does. In contrast, our notion of tools are oriented towards manipulation, and that is what we do with them. So here's a thought. If tools are defined by what we do, why don't we reimagine machines and all the things that they create as a kind of tools to relocate and regain our agency, to shift from what machines do to what we do? This may or may not be a historically accurate interpretation of what they intended, but given the questions we're asking now, and when they ask questions that we can see that they were asking, I think it's worth considering this. And to explore this further, I need to bring in another trajectory importance to the formation of industrial design in Sweden as the modernism emerges. And now I need to introduce you to Ellen Key, if you haven't heard her name before. It's a significant reference point in Swedish design history. Ellen Key was a feminist intellectual and educator who lived between 1849 and 1926. She's probably most known for her work on pedagogy and children's rights, but in the Swedish context, she's also quite influential in terms of her work on beauty. And this is a quote from her book, Beauty in the Home, published in 1913. And I'm going to read this. He fills his rooms to overflowing with furniture and decorative items. In such homes, you get the impression that the people are there to serve the furniture and the rooms, not the reverse. Even such tasteful rooms lack true taste to the keener aesthetic eye, for, as has already been stressed, rooms must not appear as if they exist for their own sake. They should be an expression of the personal needs and tastes of the inhabitants, their memories and feelings, their history. Another example. Why is a lamp on a plain column-like foot, preferably one that can be lowered and raised, more beautiful than one with excellences? Partly because the former is easier to keep clean and is more easily moved, but also because the light source itself, the most important part of the lamp, should be held up by support that neither clamors for attention nor obscures other objects. Why, for example, is the longer, slender-necked wine bottle more beautiful than the short and thick-necked one? Primarily because it's easier to pour from. So at the center of this new idea of what makes something beautiful, we find a very important reorientation from attention towards things as decorative objects that we collect and display almost as if they were a kind of work of art, to an appreciation of things on basis of what we use them for, towards things as useful things, almost like tools we live with. And if you find this familiar, but haven't encountered Ellen Key, you can consider an example like this from Dieter Rams about 60 years later, which basically state the same thing. Things are like tools. They should be neutral and restrained to leave room for the user's self-expression. There are several trajectories converging here in the formation of industrial design aesthetics in the Swedish context. So on one hand, we have the reimagination of machines and their relation to making. We have new perspectives on everyday things. And we have an overall understanding that these things take place within a bigger societal change, where the bigger question is, what kind of everyday lives are we aiming for in the future for all of us? So as we look back on this, there's a different perspective on the intentions behind functionalism and early industrial design aesthetics that's coming into view. And it's not about technology or speed, nor is it about a specific style, a way things should look and appear. Rather, it's about aesthetics as a matter of asking the world to reveal itself differently, that we see something else when we look, when we appreciate. And this is, of course, to make other futures possible. If we see things differently, other possibilities become present too. And here we have a very concrete proposal for how this can be done. To see the world differently, we shift from thinking about the things we create as decorative objects to thinking of them as a kind of tools for everyday life. And this is so obvious and familiar to us now that we don't see this anymore. To us, it's quite clear that, of course, we design useful things. But at some point, it wasn't. It was an intentional shift that was much criticized and much debated at the time. So where does this leave us now? I mean, there are obviously many differences between now and the 1930s, but there's also many similarities. We might not have excessive ornaments, but we do have AI slop. We may not have cheap copies of craft objects, but we have generative models trained on work that took a long time and much effort to create. We may not be living with fake materials that may make more expensive ones, but we probably are at least as lost in fake things as they were. And we too ask ourselves if it's possible to go back or if it's necessary to accept the state of things and move on. And so looking ahead, I'd like to end with some reflections of what I take with me from looking at these historical examples. One key for me, one key insight here is this, that to address the autonomy of machines and relocate our agency in relation to them, we need to reimagine what they are. Today, machines make many more things much more than things. They make decisions, they make other machines, they make money, to name just a few things. And as such, our contemporary machines may seem infinitely more complex compared to the ones that were addressed in the 1930s. But I think it's worth considering that one of the basic design problems remain the same. And that is, if we want to orient our efforts to something else than what machines do, their automatic actions, we need to understand them differently. We need to rethink what they are. And to do that, we need to think beyond the machines themselves. Another reflection relates to how concepts both reveal and hide things, and how important this interplay is to design. When we approach the design of something in terms of its use and usefulness, we focus on the relation between the thing and user, that which makes the thing useful. But this also means that we disregard a lot, namely almost everything that falls outside this relation that we're establishing. And I think a number of current problems has to do with unintended consequences of this exclusion. If we look at the traditional tool, it is something that really only comes to life as we use it. Tools are resources waiting for us to be used when and how we want. And even as we know that our new computational machines are not like this, and they constantly do all sorts of things on their own, like we said in the beginning of this talk, we still design them with the intent to maintain a sense of toolness to the interaction. But at some point, this increasing extent of automatic action exceeds the limit of what this toolness can compensate for. So consider searching online, for instance. Of course, there's typing, pointing, clicking, deciding where to go next, and all these things that indicate manipulation. But there's also tracking, data harvesting, advertising, AI summaries, dynamic ranking of results, behavioral nudging, and a lot more that makes it quite unclear what or whom is being used here. So it's not so much that we cannot think about these new technologies or machines in terms of usefulness, but rather that what we used to understand as use is nowhere near sufficient to explain what's going on here. And so I have come to believe that to think of these machines as tools is about as helpful to us as the notion of decorative objects were to the early industrial designers. As long as we think of AI as just another tool, we will be hiding most of what's going on. Another aspect of what notions of use and usefulness hide from you is visible if we ask questions such as, since to be useful is a relational concept, for whom is it useful? At the time, this was a powerful way of bringing people into the equation. It was a way of binding together that which we design with those who we design it for. But what this also reveals, however, is that whoever and whatever is not part of that relation is much less likely to be considered. So it becomes a kind of a tunnel vision in which the world around quickly becomes reduced to resources. Resources that, just like a tool, more or less lies there waiting for us to make use of to achieve when we want. And again, we can see different societal challenges converging, just as they did in the historical examples. Because what I just described is one of the core problems of sustainability, that of treating the world as a resource to be used up. So it looks to me that we have a problem that is not that different from the ones that we saw in early industrial design, that we need to learn to see things differently. And at this time, we need to see more than our own. We need more than human perspectives, because there's so much more to life, action, and agency than the human variety. There's no denying that the turn towards tools and useful things have been immensely effective, and that the efforts of early industrial design made significant change possible. It might therefore be quite tempting to try to do this again, to look for that one idea or paradigm that would drive change, gather the energy we need. And as I showed you, it was never their intent to become dogmatic. On the contrary, they wanted a relativistic and open approach. But despite this intention, it became dogmatic. We know modernism from the other side of experiencing it, that it became also rigid, narrow, and excluding. And I think there's something very important to learn about this. Conditioned by the constraints of mass production, our predecessors had to look for optimal solutions for the single answer that would be worth multiplying in mass production. But our condition is now different, and so are the complexities we deal with. We know for quite some time now that when it comes to the wicked problems of design, there will never be just one solution. There will always have to be many. And because of this, and a lot of different things, other things, I believe that ideas about diversity will have to be as central to the practices that we form, the ideas that we form now, as universalism was once for early industrial design. And with these reflections, I'd like to end by saying that when it comes to machines and AI, I think one of the core problems for us remain. This is not about what machines do. This is about what we do. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Forlano. I'm type 1 diabetic. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease that destroys the pancreas in the body's ability to make insulin. You're about to hear notifications from a medical device, a smart insulin pump and sensor system that I keep with me at all times. It keeps me alive. These are just samples of what I experienced during a typical 30-day period. July 1, 4:15 p.m., auto mode min delivery. 4:15 p.m., auto mode min delivery for 2.5 hours. Enter BG to continue in auto mode. 8:20 p.m., auto mode has been at max delivery for 2 hours. Enter BG to continue in auto mode. July 7, 6:06 a.m., calibrate now. 7:11 a.m., calibrate now. 8:16 a.m., calibrate now. 8:56 a.m., sensor expired, insert a new sensor. 9:34 p.m., lost sensor signal, move pump closer to transmitter. May take 15 minutes to find signal. 9:34 a.m., sensor connected, insert new sensor. Select start new. If not, select reconnect. 9:39 a.m., sensor warm-up started. Warm-up takes about 2 hours. You'll be notified when calibration is needed. 11:34 a.m., calibrate now. 11:58 a.m., BG required. 3:49 p.m., alert on low. 4:14 p.m., alert on low. 6:04 p.m., calibrate now. Now, each calibration is supposed to last up to 6 hours. I've always considered myself a very good sleeper, but this tested me. 10:19 p.m., low reservoir, 20 units remaining, change reservoir. July 10, 4:09 a.m., calibrate now. 5:20 a.m., calibrate now. 6:24 a.m., calibrate now. 7:34 a.m., calibrate now. 8:39 a.m., calibrate now. 9:44 a.m., calibrate now. I calibrated. I calibrated at 9:59 a.m. I calibrated at 10:05 a.m. Calibrating is a nice way of saying I have to prick my finger with a needle every 4 to 6 hours so that the machine can deliver the right amount of insulin in auto mode. 11:45 a.m., calibration not accepted. Wait at least 15 minutes, wash hands, test BG again, and calibrate. Well, that felt aggressive. 4:05 p.m., calibrate now. That was a nice break. That night, I stayed up and calibrated at midnight. I did not want to be woken up in the middle of the night. Main screen, do not calibrate, sensor updating. Status, sensor, time left, 2 days, 1.5 hours. 12:40 p.m., calibrate now. 1:45 p.m., calibrate now. 2:10 p.m., change sensor, sensor not working properly, insert new sensor. I was taking a nap in the afternoon from 3:30 to 5 p.m. 5:46 p.m., lost sensor signal. Move pump closer to transmitter. May take 15 minutes to find signal. 6:02 p.m., possible signal interference. Move away from electronic devices. May take 15 minutes to find signal. 6:18 p.m., check connection. Ensure transmitter and sensor connection is secure. Then select OK. 6:33 p.m., change sensor. July 15th, 12:01 a.m., alert on low. 12:26 a.m., alert on low. 12:51 a.m., alert on low. 1:06 a.m., auto mode mid-delivery. 1:06 a.m., BG required. I ate some glucose gummies. I checked my BG. I hoped this would keep me from getting reawakened during the night. It didn't. 1:16 a.m., alert on low. 4:31 a.m., BG required. 4:31 a.m., BG required. I gave up. I turned the sensor off for the rest of the night and turned it back on at 10:15 a.m. 10:20 a.m., BG required. 11:01 a.m., alert on low. 11:26 a.m., alert on low. 6:36 p.m., alert on low. 6:57 p.m., alert on low. 10:41 p.m., calibrate now. Calibrate now, alert on low. Calibrate now, alert on low. Calibrate now, alert on low. Calibrate now, calibrate now, calibrate now, calibrate now. Calibrate now. Okay, so again, my name is Laura Forlano. I'm a disabled social scientist and design researcher, and I've been studying the social implications of emerging technologies such as AI for over 20 years. And what you just heard was a data performance about the 4 years of sleep deprivation that I experienced 6 years ago. And if you cannot sleep, can you dream? I'd like to dedicate this talk to Alice Wong, an American disabled activist that died 2 weeks ago. I'd like to share an excerpt from her final words delivered by her family online. I'm honored to be your ancestor and believe disabled oracles like us will light the way to the future. Though I never met her, I will miss hearing her voice on podcasts and panels on storytelling, care, and disability. So for the past 10 years, I've been writing about and making with my own experience living intimately with machines, the insulin pump and sensor system that I use to manage type 1 diabetes. I've experienced a number of what I consider to be AI harms, but at the same time, I'm alive to share my work with you today. Now, I'd like to explain a little bit of what I've learned, how I approach thinking and making with machines, and a few dreams for the future of the design field. When Johan reached out about doing this collaborative keynote last summer, I was immediately inspired by the title, Left by Our Own Devices. While Johan's talk was situated historically and at a more macro level, mine will be very, very micro. Because, as you already know, when I think of my own devices, my devices are me. I am a disabled cyborg. My devices are inseparable from my body, my subjectivity, and my politics. I use the term disabled cyborg as a constant reminder of what it means to live with machines. And it's not only me, but also my machines that are disabled, full of flaws and failures, gaps and glitches, seams and symptoms, errors and omissions, bugs and biases. Disabled cyborgs can both be more than human, to underscore the relational understanding, and at the same time, dehumanized. While the medical model of disability locates disability in the patient's body, the social model locates it in the ways in which social structures, including the socio-technical systems and what I call intimate infrastructures, exclude and oppress disabled people. In using disabled cyborg, I extend disability scholar Alison Kafer's work to trouble the location of who or what is a problem, or, in this case, an error. My performance, what I call Adventures of a Disabled Cyborg, traces the experience of living in what communication scholar Mike Ananey calls an algorithmic error. He writes that we need to distinguish among systems, causes, harms, responsibilities, and remedies whenever data-driven automated systems fail. Algorithmic errors are almost everywhere and increasingly frequent, but they're usually hard to neatly categorize into discrete causes and harms. In particular, he explains that we need to try to understand how and why certain people see an algorithmic event as an error, while others see no error at all, just the system working as it's intended. So over time, these errors accumulate in human experience, causing a kind of slow, exhausting, everyday micro-violence. With the performance, I aim to bring to life the ways in which the dominant assumptions that are evident in the design of these medical devices are often incompatible with what it means to live a dignified life and flourish as a disabled person. Disabled people are often deprived of having agency to make decisions about our lives. Perhaps this should not be surprising, because disabled people, like other historically oppressed and marginalized people, have been and still today are often excluded from the very category of what it means to be human. For example, in a recent announcement, the US State Department declared that it could deny immigrant visas to people with certain medical conditions, including type 1 diabetes, an obvious example of eugenicist ableism. In The Future is Disabled, disability activist Leah Lakshmi Pipsina Samarsina writes, "Disabled people aren't supposed to be alive, take up space, exist." In so much utopian social justice-oriented science fiction, it's unquestioned that in the good utopian future, disabled people don't exist. In fact, a major way ableism works is to erase us from ideas of the future. But what would a future look like where the vast majority of people were disabled, neurodivergent, deaf, mad? What would a world radically shaped by disabled knowledge, culture, love, and connection be like? Have we ever imagined this, not just as a category, a cautionary tale, but as a dream? The lived experience of disabled people offers an expansion of our understanding of human difference, not as a problem to be solved or fixed, but rather opportunities for questioning our assumptions as designers and broadening our possibilities for creative expression. So here are a few of the lessons that I've learned during my experience in the last 10 years. First, there's no such thing as automated. Sometimes I wasn't sure whether the machine was taking care of me or whether I was taking care of the machine, highlighting the relational nature of life with machines. Disabled people do not need to be fixed, rather they are the fixers of their machines. These technologies need round-the-clock care, and there are significant power asymmetries between human and machine. In my case, out of the 286 alerts and alarms that I received in July 2019, only 65 were about an urgent medical issue that needed treatment, and 221 were commands nudging me to take care of the machine. Its functioning, of course, also an urgent medical issue. All AI systems require human labor of various kinds and amounts. So who is doing the labor for the AI systems that you are using? As you probably sensed, my experience living with that particular smart system was fraught. These technologies claim to fix the body, but that may be at the expense of degrading the mind. And when you hate the machine, but the machine is you, you begin to hate yourself. Designers of such systems are not merely designing human-machine relationships, but rather we're designing subjectivity itself, what Anne-Marie Willis refers to as ontological design. Yet, in the United States, the Federal Drug Administration has asked companies to define what a manufacturer intends the algorithm to become as it learns. This is an effort to reduce the regulatory burden on companies, but it also allows for software modifications that may have a very real material impact on people's everyday lives. Instead, or perhaps in addition, we might ask who future users aim to become. As designers, we must think about humans and machines relationally, interdependently, and co-evolutionarily, understanding that both humans and technologies are dynamically changing over time without succumbing to reductive transhuman fantasies about humans being uploaded into machines.
Sorry, seems that we are losing the image for the moment. I'd like to quickly check with the technical team.
Thanks. Historian Paul Edwards discusses artificial worlds in science fiction films, and he writes, these artificial worlds, for example, space stations and cities, may pretend to a self-sufficient autonomy. Oops. Stay there for a moment. That they cannot really possess. Though often darkened, they are rarely still. Technological artifacts within the space assist in projecting an underlying electric tension. The flickering fluorescent light, the ringing telephone, the active computer screen, the flashing indicators on a CPU. Sleep is fretful and frequently disturbed. In 24/7, Jonathan Crary writes, the denial of sleep is the violent dispossession of the self by external force, the calculated shattering of an individual. But as we know from the work of Matthew Wolf-Myers, our current normative sleep regimes are highly organized around industrial capitalism, and as a result, sleep disorders are pathologized. So in my case, over those 4 years, I not only developed a genuine fear of sleeping, I also became convinced that when I did sleep, I was sleeping like a sensor, in shorter patterns that mimic the system. And this illustrates the ways in which we humans both shape and are shaped by our machines. As such, following anthropologist Nick Seaver, it makes sense to view AI not merely as a tool, but AI as culture itself. Even if you do not use it, it's already shaping you. Is AI refusal even possible, given the extent to which it's already being used by companies keen to cram it into every digital product, platform, and interface? Power asymmetries also matter with respect to who designs technology and who uses it. Seemingly small modifications have a significant impact. Echoing Orit Halpern's testbed urbanism, type 1 diabetics, such as myself, experience the body as a testbed. For example, one version of the smart system took away certain options and made it more difficult for me to eat a pizza, a food that I really happen to like. This suggests the need for greater opportunities for participatory design methods in the development of AI. But while participation is not a design fix for AI systems, it's essential for surfacing different questions about the role of design and technology in the future. Following design justice and disability justice principles, AI development needs to be led by those that are most impacted or most likely to be harmed, according to disability rights organizations Sins Invalid. Number 5, social relationships matter a great deal. They're often running in the background, holding everything together when systems fail, and we can use design to sustain and strengthen those relationships. So for example, when the plastic battery cap on my insulin pump broke, rendering the device's software useless, the solution was not a DIY fix. I tried super glue, or waiting several days for the company to send a new one by FedEx, but rather the fact that a diabetes trainer that I'd worked with 3 years before recognized my name and happened to have an extra, which he delivered to me personally in less than 2 hours. Another time when I chose the wrong health insurance and almost couldn't afford to purchase my insulin for the remaining 6 months of the year, type 1 diabetes Twitter came to the rescue within a week, and an acquaintance that I've never met left 6 bottles of insulin at a hotel front desk, a powerful gesture of mutual aid and solidarity. In her new book, The Double Bind of Disability, Rebecca Monteleone describes the ways in which disabled people are particularly those using medical technologies that are sold based on a rhetoric of individual autonomy, independence, and consumer choice, are trapped in a double bind, which requires personal accountability for managing disability through its prevention, treatment, or cure, while their experiential and embodied knowledge is questioned or dismissed, which is evidence of a strengthening moral regime that demands both responsibility and compliance. And within this context of self-management, fostering collectivity itself can be understood as a radical act that is working in opposition to individualistic and capitalist systems. So in spring 2024, after many years of isolation, I started a group called T1 Design for scholars, designers, and artists, which has now grown to over 30 members across 5 countries. We meet on a monthly basis on Zoom and just completed our first collaboration, a workshop at an upcoming conference. 6, while manufacturers constantly offer techno-optimistic promises, I've learned that waiting for the next version of a system is not a solution for me or for the planet. Philosopher and disability scholar Ashley Shue suggests that instead, we might view these promises through a lens of techno-ableism, when companies offer solutions that disabled people don't need. And here's an example of one meme that was circulated in a type 1 diabetes group on Facebook this summer after the introduction of the new type 1 diabetic Barbie by Mattel. As you can see, the sensor error. So the problems with the systems may look a little bit different today than they did 6 years ago, but they persist, and they will never disappear because failure is the norm when living both with humans and with machines. Yet, for liability reasons, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out who to blame when things go wrong. And in addition, now I'm throwing away an even bigger hunk of plastic every 10 days. Lastly, binary logics might work for machines, but they certainly are not fit for humans. Medical technologies for managing type 1 diabetes promise freedom, knowledge, and transparency about one's blood sugar, but instead, our bodies become closed worlds in which data and information is all that matters, and threats, risks, and attacks become almost self-imposed. Rather than certainty, type 1 diabetics live with constant uncertainty as we navigate abstractions and live in between these proxies. In the data performance, I frequently referred to the alert on low alarm. According to the machine, the number 80 is normal, but the number 79 is too low. And for me, on one side of that boundary, perhaps a beautiful dream. Though, in my case, it's most likely a dream about losing things. While on the other side, several hours of interrupted sleep and a day as a type 1D zombie. But don't just take my word for it. You can observe many of these things in your everyday life with machines if you know what to look for, what Anna Tsing calls arts of noticing. So where do we go from here in the design field? Should we think about algorithmic error as a problem to be solved? Is AI a polycrisis in itself? Is it part of the post-normal condition in which there is no normal to go back to? Or should we think about algorithmic error as a new question? I see it as an opening for new design approaches and creative practices. And recently, there have been a number of major museum exhibitions about disabled art-making practices, including one at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and also one at the San Diego Museum of Art. My response to this experience has been to move away from rational arguments and explanations and rather towards more performative, visceral, somatic, embodied, and experiential modes, both as a way of storytelling about my own experience, as well as a way of understanding myself, my data, and my machines. In addition to the data performance, my postdoc My postdoc, Sasha de Koenig, and I have been working on a data physicalization of the same data set in the form of a digitally knit blanket, complete with the text calibrate now and alert on low. The blanket tells the story of the ways in which it's impossible to truly separate the human and the machine. These projects have allowed me to think about what I call data demons, which are ways of working with data and computation that disrupt and disorient, exaggerate and complicate, confuse, and corrupt. So what if we take a critical data studies approach to understanding AI, as my co-author and I do in the Cyborg book? And on the right-hand side is a list of terms that I kind of have riffed on, also thinking about Johan's talk. So forgive the misspellings, but for effect. Disabled, made, situated, contextual, infrastructural, local, labor, material, temporal, contextual, contextual again, communal, and biased. So to end on a similar note to where Johan ended, the question is not what AI will become, and especially not what corporations want AI to become, but rather it's what we as humans want to become with technology. So what might it mean to crip AI in the design field, or to view every design project from the perspective of disabled people? How can we both live with and live well with machines? How can we expand our understanding of humanity in order to offer alternative ways of imagining AI otherwise? What is it for and for whom? So, in closing, to return once again to my own experience with the intrusive alarms that kept me up at night for 4 years, sensors and humans make very strange bedfellows. Someday, in the near future, I'll crawl into bed and cozy up, wrapped in a deep blue blanket, knit from my data, and drift off to sleep. Because if we cannot sleep, we cannot dream. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, a big round of applause to thank Professor Laura Furlano for the excellent presentations, as well as to Johan for your incredible presentations. So with that, we will move on to the panel discussion, where we will invite our 3 panelists to join us on the stage. So everybody, with that, please give another round of applause as we welcome our 3 panelists to join us on the stage to respond and also to extend the conversations from different perspectives based on humanities that we aim to discuss. And I'm sure that based on our 2 speakers' presentations, it indeed sparked new insights and remind us that the relations with machines, not only it's in our everyday lives, but also in some corners that we not commonly seen in our everyday things. All right, so with that, I'll hand the floor to our speakers and panelists to start the panel discussion.
Okay, so hello, testing, is it on?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So we want to transition to the panel, and we have 3 distinguished panelists here with us today. Do you want to introduce yourself, each of you, with 1 short statement?
Yes, I'm Chu, Su-Chen Chu, and all my friends call me Chu, and I'm from Xicheng University, Industrial Design Department. Right now, I'm the Dean of the Admission Office, and I've been the Dean of the International Office and the General Affairs Office, and it's my pleasure to be here to share our points and the discussion with all of you, and thanks you for being here. Thank you.
Okay, right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, the machine must be something kind of anxious and nervous itself. And so, right, hi, I'm Hui Wenling. I'm from Thailand, National Cheng Kung University. I'm currently teaching in the Institute of Creative Industries Design. Nice to meet you all. We hope we'll have a meaningful discussion. Thank you.
So, hello, everyone. I'm Yuan Qi Zheng from National Tsinghua University. And I am based in many different programs, so hard to describe. But basically, I study human-centered AI and mainly focus on interdisciplinary cooperation.
Great. So I think we have a number of questions that we prepped, together with the panel. We've been meeting for a couple of months to think about this conversation. And the first thing we wanted to think about is, one, I think we're very curious about what new questions we should be asking in the design field and your practice in particular. And we would love to have a short round of responses, and then hopefully a more fluid conversation as well. So maybe if we can start with Professor Chu, with what kinds of questions should we be asking, and could you give an example from your own practice from the local context here in Taiwan?
And I think that because I'm from the design education field, so I would like to say something about the AI, the impact for the design education. I think the design education right now, the curriculum is facing the turning point change. The AI actually really, do a lot of did a lot of jobs, instead of what the design practitioner. So there is something that the design curriculum really focus on in the future. It might not exist. We don't have that kind of job, or we don't have the kind of a position anymore. So the curriculum, actually the content of the curriculum has to shifting from from where we are, and we have to do more and think about what is the curriculum should be. And there are 3 keywords for me that I think that which is critical. First one is research. Before, when we are doing the research, we are trying to research for the answer. We are trying to find out what is the correct answer. But right now, when we are doing research, because of the AI coming, I think the technology gives us a lot of opportunity. And right now, we are now doing research not for just the answer, not merely the answer, but also mostly we were doing that for problem. The designer has to be in some way, we have to be the strategist and also I think the decision maker. So instead of just seeking for the answer, we are now has to seeking for the problem. What is the real question is? Because the question itself in the future, it could be not just production, for the industrial design, not just the production, but how to harmonize people and the user and the environment. Before, we don't have that kind of capacity, the energy, to really think over everything. But right now, the technology empower us to do this kind of thing. And second is empathy. When we are talking about empathy, before we are talking always about the users. But right now, we has to be, the empathy could be, in some way, not just the users, but culture, but environment, but sustainability, all these kind of things. The AI cannot replace the designers as a human to do this kind of thinking at this moment. We don't know how far it will go. At least here, right now, we think that this is the empathy that we have to focus on. And the third keyword is bridging. When we're talking about bridging, it's about the collaboration and the communications. For example, when we are talking about the design, we are always have to cooperate with all the design field. In the future, all design is cross-disciplinary. No design will exist just by itself. So to bridging the idea and the background and all the knowledge base will be the core capability for all the designers. And I think the 3 keywords should be the future content of design curriculum, and we will have to shift from where we are to it now. Thank you.
honestly, I'm really happy to see this because it has its emotion and it has its time. Right. Yeah, I think after listening to two of the keynote speakers, I'm really happy to see that all the combination of us from the macro point of view and the micro. And thankfully, I'm kind of in the middle, the meso point of view, the perspective taking from where we kind of are guided by Rohan for the nation, continent-wise, and from Laura's kind of medical devices, smart devices. And from my point of view, because I come from the background of architecture and interior design, and nowadays I kind of do my research on related to placemaking, the regional making, and how the possibility of the issues that we can discuss from objects to place. So it's kind of in a middle scale that we can really have some kind of insights. I think according to our understanding, I think during the 70s, 60s, that Johan was mentioning about how this, the living place is being shaped and everything by, how the machine has been cooperated. And I remember that according to a lot of households, the very kind of affordable, functional, very accessible, or even very democratic type of design for furnitures. I don't know if any one of you have encountered that you purchase a chair, like a design chair. You don't actually see the chair as a design piece, but you actually stand on it to fix your lighting bulbs, right? And maybe you kind of hang over a coat, or maybe your pet was sleeping on it and then feeling comfortable. And so actually we have a different interpretation and also the different use and function about this chair. So what is the kind of the shifting from original a brand or a piece of signature chair to become a standing platform? I think that's something to do with how the machine probably give us some help or maybe pull off a bit. How this shift from the object can be really meaningful to many different families, because all this manufacturing of all the furnitures should be quite generally used and welcomed, popular by many households. But how, when this use of life, when the life of the furniture has been used after purchasing, will be stored somewhere in the house, and then the life continues. And how we use the chair, we use that piece of furniture, really define the unique lifestyle of that family, of that house, or of a group of people who love each other, who share the similar tradition. So I think we have got something to do with in between. So would it be some kind of design friction that we're supposed to not having a misuse of the misfunctional use of that piece of furniture, become that furniture could be more emotionally attached or even have a feedback of the feelings, then we can do something on it. So I'm thinking about from this point of view. And yeah, maybe we can have a further discussion. I think I've got something to do with, with my Garmi. By the way, Garmi is an excellent brand, just to promote here. And yeah, I think later we could talk about it.
Okay, it's my turn. So my question is about human-AI relationship. But when we talk about relationship, everything becomes serious. So I would like to share a funny nightmare I had last night. I can sleep, but I had bad dream. So what is the dream? So in that dream, I co-work with AI to generate the background for my questions. But it generates the background, and then in the dream, I practice it, and it spent me 30 minutes. So, and that happened just like right now. I spent 30 minutes to talk about the background, and then I finally find I use up everyone's time, and then I suddenly wake up. So you see, the AI already entered people's dream, and and then it is quite. It's my first time to have an AI dream. Yeah. So, but because I study human-centered AI, and so I'm guaranteed to make the background short. Okay. So as AI move beyond just as a tool, so it starts to shape our judgment and decisions. So I have a grown increasing concern about something subtle, the thing that most of us did not notice is quite often, is our ownership is shifting. So, so do we still make meaningful decision and shape our value, shape our outcome by our own, or actually we start to be influenced or shaped by the machine that we design? So my question is, how can we design AI systems or systems that has AI-driven to actively cultivate human AI co-agency? So now we become both agent, human and AI. So so allow us still to make our own decision rather than being shaped by the machine. So that's the question I want to bring to discuss today with two distinguished speakers here.
I try this one. Yeah. Thank you. So an obvious follow-up from asking questions is, since this is such complex issues, how do we go about answering these questions? How do we set up our practices, our educations, and so on, to respond to this? So I think a follow-up question here might be, if we can go back to the questions you asked, and we can take turns again, to just say something about, you don't have to provide an answer to your questions, of course, and we don't even need answers at this point, but just getting a sense, how do you, in your local environments, in your sort of practices, respond to these questions? How are you sort of scaffolding, coming up with projects and ideas for how this can be achieved? So maybe we can take the opposite order, if you might start telling us, so how do you go about answering these questions? Because I think this is a critical question for all of us. We can realize, oh, we need to do something about these things. They're urgent, but the question is how? Where do we start? When I go first.
You can I don't have microphone. So Professor Zhu.
Yeah. Does it work? Oh, really? Okay, great. You see, in the different hands. Okay. All right. That's it.
我们可以请工作人员再帮我们确认一下台上麦克风的电量吗？谢谢。
Okay, this works. I think that this is a real opportunity that I can share my experience for one of our project, because we have a government sponsored project we call the USR. I think that most of people here, maybe you may know or may not know. It's a university social responsibility project which is sponsored by the government, and there is one sub-project. The whole project is for the ALS patient. The ALS, I think that you will know it because of several years ago we have an ice bucket challenge. Yeah, so the people know the kind of patient. This is a really rare disease. It's a terrible disease which we don't have a perfect cure, because I think the disease is because of the DNA defect. So there's no perfect cure at this moment. So the patient were in the end, they can only do blinking, to show their needs. So this kind of disease is like a combination. It's an integrated disease for all disease, because you will be freezed, part by part, along with the time going. So we would like so for the design, we want to do something for the kind of disease, not just to cure it, because we are not medical doctors, but we want to see what we can do for them and for their family, to make them life easier and make them to live in a dignity. So we have a sub-project called the Voice Bank. I think the Voice Bank is a very good idea, and a lot of patients has adopted that solution, because in the end, the ALS patient, they are not able to speak because their throat, they cannot control the muscle of their throat, so they are not able to speak. So, but when they have after diagnosis, they know they got the disease, they can leave their voice in the bank. So afterward, when they want to use it, they can type, they can blink, and the AI can generate the voice just as it was before. So it's not it's not a method. It's not just a solution for a perfect solution to deal with to cure the disease. But it's a matter of to sustain their dignity and to sustain the familiarity for all his family and his friends. You can still hear his voice even when he is not able to speak. So we have that kind of, we design all the interface, and we cooperate with the engineering department, and to make these things become real. And I think that kind of things is what we say, we are not, when we are dealing with the patient or disease, sometimes we are thinking only about maybe how to cure it, how to make it, how to make it much more comfortable or something. But these things, we redefine the problem as a dignity, and to be familiar, to make him to be familiar with all his family when he is not able to communicate in normal voice. So this is kind of things that I'm thinking about. The design education has to be shifting from just to making something, but to shifting from to defining the problem, and to cross-disciplinary collaboration, and then to make these things with empathy, with all the environment, with the ecology. That's what I said, and this is a project I would like to share. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I'd like to. Well, I have got no solution yet, but I have encountered a situation which I actually deliver an ethnographic study of an indigenous tribe in the community, which is the Silayan in Kaohsiung, Neiman. And actually, from the anthropologist or ethnographical researcher's point of view, we're supposed to get some data, which is very visual-oriented data, in order to elicit the inner feeling. And also, because we discovered, right, okay, let's start from the beginning. We started to understand how the elders actually live in the tribe, in the Aboriginal tribe, who actually encountered the disconnection of everything, including, of course, technology, and also the relationship and the belongingness of themselves and with their family. So we're thinking about how we could help somehow sustain the inheritance culture, but started from the individual family, individual self, and also the the logos, the inner self. So we started to use the general recognized ethnographical tool, which is the photo voice, and which is one of the technique is to deliver the disposable camera to all these elders to capture their daily life. So about their relationship, about themselves, about object that daily use by them. But it's also some gap and disconnection that we cannot deliver and communicate very well from a very starting point. For example, how to use the disposable camera. And there's just nothing we could really introduce. For example, we were thinking about we can make a recording of the instruction, step number 1, step number 2, but there's no device that they can use. And there's nothing they could, well, a lot of them are not so well, the language, the writing literacy was fulfilled. So there's no way that we could write things to remind them, to kind of guide them, but how can we do it? So it's I kind of use the technology myself, kind of adopted by the skill, how this instruction of use the very simple thing that everyday life that in urban living, human beings should know, but we have to shift from our point of view to a group of people who has no connection of the internet. There's no phone, there's no mobile phone, and it's really hard if you can really just write a manual. There's no possible for them to read. And how you can collect data, how you can collect the visual-based data. So of course we started to borrow all the technique that we can use, that using a very pictorial, like cartoon or picture like kind of instruction to instruct. But there's no guarantee that they will remember what you were mentioning on the picture, and there's a disconnection, and also there's some gaps in between the recognition of image and the signified image. So that's another issue that related to the westernized theory, that how the signified symbols and all these things connect to the really actual function use of that thing, of that object. So from this starting point, you can't even get enough data or accurate data. So in the end of the day, we received all the pictures on. It's about how the elder went with their neighbors to a field trip. So they kind of really, happy to take pictures, but it's nothing to do with what we wanted to in the beginning, gathering relationship, gathering about your family and your objects. It's just really hard. So I've got no answer so far yet, because from the researcher's point of view, we need some data. But how the data how come when the data cannot be kind of received kind of properly, but we will have to really remind ourselves that this is reality. This is the societal issue that we all need to face. Maybe you can develop something that we can really collect data in a different way. So yeah, that's how I like to respond so far.
Okay, although I raised the question, I don't have an answer either. But based on our experience in our recent work with a lot of AI chatbot that we designed with Chilin there and Yachin there and Edison there, 3 of them will have a presentation later, so they could explain a little bit more detail about our work. But basically, we found that the center issue is not we start from what the AI can do, but I realized that we need to shift the paradigm. It's not only about what AI can do, but how we feel when we work with it. Yeah, so we need to study how humans feel when we work with AI. So that's remind me that that come up with the user experience. Before that, we try to make a machine work for us, and then later we focus on user experience, on those computer systems, on those machines. we care about what the human feel. And the AI, which is bringing another new golden age for designer, actually. So, then now we could start to think about how we feel when we work with AI, how we design a system that could, the system already shift to our ownership. So for example, back to our chatbot design for diabetes management. So we realized that if the AI, of course, AI could provide a lot of good suggestions for patients and guide the patient to have a better management about their diabetes, about what the food they have, and when to have the medicine and other things. But we still found that once patients start to over-rely on it, and sometimes it could erode the trust between patient and the doctor. And on the other hand is that it could erode the ownership, the agency. People lose the confidence, actually. So lose the efficacy about themselves. So it's like, oh, I cannot do anything. I need to follow the machine tell me to do anything. So that's would be, and one day I think it's become the AI's limitation. So if we want to allow AI, because humans still shape our decision about how AI become part of our lives. So if we want to allow AI become our one part of our lives, so we have this own last decision on it. So carefully design becomes so important. So I don't have an answer, but I encourage everyone here, and including students, professionals, and academic and industrial leaders, to think about it, how we design AI that care about our feeling.
I have one. So it seems like it's such an opportunity, since we come from quite different places here, and this is such an international conference. I want to just to follow up on a sort of issue that surfaced a bit in your responses here, but that I think you, Professor Lin, especially mentioned. That is, what is the importance of culture here when we resolve and address these issues? Because if we think about humanity and the human aspect of technologies, I mean, culture should be there at the forefront. And yet many of the responses or solutions we see, and also especially on the corporate side of how AI works, there is almost always a global perspective on it, at least commercially. So I was wondering if you could say something about how you see this, and what you think might be the important issues with respect to cultural diversity as we engage with these technologies. It is a difficult question, but just your thoughts on it.
I think the microphone somehow has a volume threshold, so you have to speak loud enough for the others. Thank you.
And I think that thank you, Lohan. I think they raised a good question, about the culture. I think that the culture really is a key issue which distinguish the AI-generated robot and the human beings. Because sometimes at this moment, I think the AI or the robot, it still cannot distinguish, still cannot be that kind of, sensitive for the subtle difference of the cultural context and also the subtle feelings. When people in the different cultural context, there will be a very, very, sometimes even like a hint about what can be done and what cannot be done, okay? So I think that the AI at this moment, it cannot do that, okay? So at this moment, this is like a very subtle difference for the human beings and the AI robot. So I think this is also what I said about when I talking about the empathy. This is a part of the empathy. The AI has this right now still has enough empathy for not just the human beings, but for the environment and the culture, And it's like we have a greater performance before, okay? And the sound is perfect, okay? It reminds me about the jazz music, different people play jazz in a different kind of mood and a different kind of tempo. When you are using AI, yes, it can switch to different kind of mode, but it will never be like different people in different background, and that's the kind of subtle feeling, the subtle difference, So when we go into the bar, we are enjoying that kind of subtle difference. When we are listening to all the kind of music, the difference, it's like listen to the CD and listen to the live performance. When you are with a live performance, you are there. The experience is unique and it's so different. I think that's what I said about the cultural difference and the cultural context. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we might have time for brief responses, but I think our time is running out. But we have so much to talk about. But I would really like to hear from Professor Lin and Professor Tseng as well before we close.
Okay. Yeah, I have something to say, but just a quick follow, Professor Jules. I think it's about, I think maybe in our audience, we have some audience from a particular background who are so delicate in expressing emotion, and also the different kind of a politeness of expressing emotion. So I was thinking about the cultural misuse or misinterpreting, without even human being. We misinterpreting cultures. We misinterpreting emotion and facial expression, because there's another layer that is actually a toxic type of instinct in certain culture. So how the cultural based interpretation could be even more developed later. I think there's something that just aroused my kind of insights. So it's about how to read human emotion. I was just mentioning about the Gami. I don't know if you have this kind of experience that one day you woke up and you're feeling so energetic. But when you kind of check your Garmin, and it says, like, it gave me like a points, right, every night. And it gave me like 55. And I was thinking about why I feel really good. But it marked me like 55. So I kind of checked what happened. So it said that I lack of deep sleep, or maybe not lacking, but it's kind of I'm lacking kind of a good proportion of deep sleep and shallow sleep. So I wasn't very good with balancing myself. But even though I'm kind of emotionally, or my body feels really well. So during that day, when I feel a bit tired, and I suddenly just consciously reminds me of, yes, he tells me I should be tired because of the imbalance of deep and shallow sleep. So it's kind of, I feel like, is this helping me? And because thankfully I'm not yet kind of any kind of a long-term, disease. So this is just kind of my little monitor just to double check. But if for some people who really suffer, of course, it's very kind of objectively data and subjectively revealed data that actually tells you feel wrong, right? You're wrong because you're emotionally and you feel is wrong. So I'm just thinking about this, how the future machine can really capture that. And yeah, I think from this, yeah, so maybe you can pass on to just...
And briefly towards the end, processing.
10 seconds maybe. Yeah. So this reminds me that Alison and Charlie and me has a study how to design chatbot for LGBTQ plus people to practice coming out. And then we noticed that East culture and West culture, because Alison Hall is American, and then we found it's so different. So the culture brings us the regulation, bring us the ethics, guide us how to do, and also give us some pressure. So when you design AI system or chatbot, if you don't really understand or study from culture, then you might give the person wrong suggestion and recommendation. And nowadays, we all know LLMs is large language. It means they forget our little language. But still, we based on this powerful large language model, but we still need to focus on that. We need to bring cultural background to our design and allow this agent could understand the culture, so it could provide suitable suggestion and recommendation, and also discuss with the user about what to do, what should do.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very nice note to end on, and I believe our time is up.
Yeah, thank you.
So
thank
you
all
so
your
much for
perspectives.
participating.
All right, so once again, thank you very much to our speakers and our panelists for such an engaging session. Please feel free to remain seated. And in this session, I'm sure that everybody gained insights on how can we reimagine machines and what they made, and also how design can we reshape the relations with machines and AI, with humanity being placed at the center and really being cared for. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our morning sessions on the Keynote Forum of Humanity for ISDR 2025. And also for the informations about the conferences, please refer to the information in the Wuba app. This is the most accurate information for the materials that we use for this event. All right, so thank you very much once again for your participations. Our parallel sessions in the afternoon will take place on the 6th floor of the Taipei New Horizon building. You may follow the guidance of our staff and the signage also in the park area for the session rooms. The afternoon session will begin at 1:45. So we'll see you at 1:45 p.m. And once again, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We wish you a stimulating day and discussions ahead and a wonderful week here in ISDR 2025. Thank you very much.